the agency supervisor training. We have about 45 or 50 participants that will be joining us. I am going to tell you we will be recording this for some individuals who cannot be here. So if you don't want your face to show, here's your fair warning. So we will be recording this. So I'm Bonnie Rinks. I'm the Director of Field Education for the University of Southern Indiana Social Work Program for both Masters and Bachelors. We're joined today by Summer Wildeman, who is the Assistant Director, and by Cynthia Edwards, who is our Graduate Assistant. And you have probably gotten a lot of emails from Cynthia already. So today's training will cover a lot of different things. It will begin now. And so if we could go ahead and advance the slide. So make sure that you are registered for your free CEU. We sent it to you this morning as well, but this is the link. If for some reason you are not registered, or if you are watching this in an office with one or more people, make sure that you let us know that you're there. So if you look at the chat feature, if everyone would go ahead and sign into the chat feature, everyone who's watching it from your location. So sign into the chat feature, put your name, your email address, and the agency you are with. So Cynthia will make sure that we get that tallied. And then once we finish, excuse me, we will send this to Outreach and Engagement and make sure that you get sent a evaluation form for this. So again, Bonnie Rinks, joined here with Summer Wildeman and Cynthia Edwards. So we wanted to remind everyone that we do still have an online certificate program for addiction studies. It is a post-master's certificate in addiction science. So it's ideally designed for either individuals who have completed their master's degree or are currently working on their master's degree. If you have an interest in this or you want more information, be sure and contact Dr. Jay Dickerson. If for some reason you are interested and you miss his email address, you can email us and we'll make sure you get to the right place. So this is one of the things we do every year. We try to get together and talk about why we are doing our training. We do have a lot of new supervisors joining us this year, and we have a lot of people who have been supervisors but haven't supervised for a number of years who are joining us today and are going to be supervising students. So we want to go over a few things. We hope it helps relieve some of the stress and maybe just questions that you might have. And then if you have questions, you can do a couple of different things. You can unmute yourself and ask. You can put them in the chat feature, or you can wait toward the end and then you can ask those questions. And then Cynthia will be monitoring that chat feature to make sure that we get your questions. So in field, students are provided opportunities to apply the social work knowledge and skills that they have learned in the classroom and to practice in an actual setting. By the time a student completes field, they should be ready to enter the profession. So, so that's kind of what you are doing. The first little bit of field, oftentimes students engage in shadowing and observation. Then they start doing things with their supervisor, and then by the time they finish the year, they should be working independently. So we hope that helps to clarify some of the expectations associated with field education. So supervisors are working with students, helping them bridge that gap or bridge between being a student to being a professional. All of our interns are in their last year of their internship, last year of their education, whether that's their VSW program, it's VSW seniors, or in the MSW program, it's in their last year or their clinical year of their MSW program. So we ask that field supervisors help students master the competency, values, go over the skills necessary to be a clinical or, a social worker. And so we ask that you help them learn to be a social worker and not just work for a specific agency. Although the reality of it is many of our students do get hired by their agencies where they do their internship. So we're asking you to be creative in the learning opportunities. If you would want your coworker to have the skills, include the student in that as well. So what we're going to talk about today is basically we'll give you an overview of how we place students. We just find that helps clarify, like, well, why wasn't I contacted until, you know, I was contacted in March, but my friend who works at a different agency wasn't contacted until June. And so how we place students. We talk about who is who and their roles. We want to talk a little bit about CSWE, our accrediting body, their competencies and the practice behaviors, as well as the student learning plan, and then what to do if problems occur. And then we have some frequently asked questions, but if you have questions, you can type those into the box or unmute yourself and we'll answer those. So how we placed generalist students. Basically, we send out a survey monkey to our agencies in the fall of the year asking about hosting students for the upcoming year. If you think you're going to take 3 students or 5 students or 10 students, whatever, but something happens and you have already filled out the form, it's not written in stone. We just want to get an idea of how many of our agencies are going to take how many of our students. It helps us plan for admissions. So step 2 is students are provided with a list of available agencies with whom they have agreements with, and then who has said that they're going to take students. And then, okay, I'll hold on a second. Muted. There we go. All right. Students review the list that's provided for them, and then they filled out an agency of interest form. And you can see it's kind of located here on the side. Then what we do is we gather all this information. We group students into kind of categories. So if we have 4 students who have the same agency listed as number 1, then we ask that agency to interview all of those students at one time. So we try to do that for 2 reasons. It helps us keep track of who we have sent where, but we also feel like the feedback that we have gotten from you is that many times agencies prefer to interview all the students at one time rather than a student in March, a student in April, a student in June, that sort of thing. So then we place our students based on that interest form. Our clinical students are very similar, although we don't have as many clinical agencies because it's a specialist or specialty program. So we ask in SurveyMonkey how many of the agencies are going to be accepting clinical students. And then we send those students that list as well. And then we review the list. We work with our students based on their interest form.
So she's absolutely right with our MSW students with the clinical placement, since it is a little bit more specialized and it's, you know, possible that they may not get one of those agencies of interest. In addition to that, we ask them for their populations. So if for some reason those chosen agencies don't work out, then that gives us a little bit of guideline on, oh, they would prefer to work with addictions or with children or whatever it happens to be, and we can match them up with our available agencies.
Once the students' interests are identified, then we contact the agencies to find out if you're interested in interviewing them. Even though we have the SurveyMonkey that we sent out in the fall, we give you the opportunity to say, I need to adjust that. I said I was only going to take 2 students, but we've expanded and I can take 3. Or the reverse is also true. I said I was going to take 3, but in reality, I can only take 2 this year. So we contact you. Then once you have said yes, then we have the students send their resume to you and interview just like it was a job. So if it's a good fit for both you and the student, you offer the student the internship. It's a great fit for the student accepts. Then we send final paperwork for you to fill out. And once that paperwork is received, then that internship is sealed. And the students are really happy because on our spreadsheet, we turn it green. So they're pretty happy when we say, we have all of your paperwork, you are now green, ready to go. So then a month or so before the student begins, we ask that you meet with your student either via Zoom or in person do an orientation, talk about dress codes, their schedule, any policies and procedures that the student needs to know. Little things like where they need to park, where they will do their work, where their office space will be or their workspace will be. So we ask that they know that, so as soon as they begin their internship, they can start working toward their hours and their competencies in the internship. If you have students this fall, and most of you do, they should have already been in contact with you to set up their schedules. If you have not heard from your student, please let us know because we will contact them. We use a lot of terminology, so just to kind of be clear about who is who. We call the agency field supervisors, instructors, field instructors, field supervisors. We also have task instructors or task supervisors. And these are individuals in your agency that you might tap to work with a student on a certain activity or a certain project. Those are all at the agency. And then on the university side, we have faculty field liaisons or seminar instructors that will have your students in groups of about 10 to 12 students for their seminar class. And of course, we all work with our students, and so we have BSW and MSW student interns. So we have BSW students as well as MSW students, and at the undergraduate level, all of our BSW students are generalist students. It's a broadly defined category. It's the foundation of social work. It's designed so that students can demonstrate competencies at the generalist level. And these include things like case manager, advocate, broker, community organizer, group worker, etc. Sometimes they perform tasks, case management activities, skills training and development. They can also be in a macro role where they're doing some community organizing and that sort of thing. The first year of our MSW program is also generalist. We place those students in the summer, and some of the students, I see some of the names here, and I know some of you are finishing up with your interns this summer. And then we have the clinical students. That is, we call it the MSW2. All USI MSW students complete a clinical field practicum. That's when they are ready to graduate and then go out into the field and practice as a beginning social worker. The advanced placement provides the agency-based internship so that they can practice those clinical social work skills. We work with CSWE. Students have to demonstrate competencies or demonstrate mastery of those competencies at the clinical level. It reflects the knowledge and skills and values of a clinical practitioner. There are some generalist activities that may be part of that, but again, we're trying to focus on those clinical skills, emphasizing that students will be developing those therapeutic skills because when they graduate in May, they will be hired at your agency. And so making sure that they get opportunities to practice the skills they need to be a beginning social worker. Our clinical students need to be supervised by an LCSW. And many of you, I've asked for updates on your paperwork because I've had a lot of new names. So if you've had requests for paperwork from us in the past few weeks, that's the reason why. Now, the student has responsibilities as well in their internship. We want them to be mindful and to reflect on the tasks and activities they have done in each week. During their supervision and their meetings with you, we want them to explore any kind of conflictual feelings that have come up. We want them to exercise critical thinking skills, as well as to focus on their student learning plan. And the student learning plan we'll get into more detail later. But one of the things we try to tell students is their student learning plan is a living, breathing document. It's not a one and done. And so there may be tasks and activities that come up during the course of their internship that they haven't included in their SLP but are good learning opportunities. And so they can add those to their SLP across their internship. We also want them to practice within the NASW Code of Ethics and to master the Code of Ethics. More importantly, we want them to be open to constructive feedback, because they are students after all, and they need to be guided and trained so that when they do graduate, they will be able to practice at that beginning level. One of the important things we'd like for students to do is to have a schedule with your agency and stick to it. And we tell them to have that schedule and stick to it, but also to be open to opportunities that maybe don't occur on the days that they are there. So we want them to have that schedule and stick to it, but also be flexible to opportunities that might arise. And then one of the things the student, they work with you at the agency, but they also have their faculty field liaison that they're working with. And so they're kind of working with two supervisors. And that can be sometimes confusing for them. So I'm going to pass this on over to Summer, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about the SLP and some other things.
Okay. So thank you, Bonnie. Next, we're going to talk about those faculty field liaisons. So they actually have two roles. They teach the seminar class, and they are that branch professionally between the agency and the student. So we are very, very fortunate. Bonnie and I talk about this all the time. We have a really amazing team. So these are actually the folks that you all are going to interact with. So our BSW generalist instructors for this year are on our left, and then our MSW clinical are on our right. So you will be hearing from them. You will be getting emails from them about scheduling midterms and all that kind of fun stuff. Let's talk a little bit about their role. So like I said, they have two roles. They do conduct the seminar class. And so in that class, really the goal of that is to make that connection between the academic learning and their practical skills that they are doing in internship. And so just kind of helping to facilitate that bridge between those two things in that process. They also are responsible for that personal growth of the student, addressing strengths as well as challenges, giving constructive feedback, being honest, being direct, helping them with those professional standards of social work as well as the code of ethics. And that will be, you'll see this repeated because some of this overlaps with the agency supervisor as well. But that helps to wrap around the student and make sure they're getting that from all angles. The role of that liaison is also to assure that they're meeting those core competencies, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Are they abiding by their SLP? Are they getting the experiences they need? They are also the person that will not only be communicating with you, but will conduct the student's midterm and final evaluation. And then keeping that line of communication open between the agency and the student. So the field instructors' roles are, so this is what you all are doing at the agency. So like I said, you'll see a lot of overlap here. Making sure the students meeting those competencies. Are they working their SLP? Opening that communication, not only with USI, but if you utilize a task supervisor. And we'll talk more about that task supervisor here shortly. Because you are their supervisor, on paper, and you need to sit with them to do their supervision and all of that. But there may be other professionals in your agency that would be really great for the intern to be with as well and to get additional skills. And so we'll talk about that role here in just a minute. You meet with the student and the liaison to do the midterm and final evaluation and paperwork. You also are responsible for reviewing timesheets, doing the signatures on those to verify the student's hours, as well as verifying their supervision. And then again, these same things that we talked about with the liaison, their personal and professional growth, giving that feedback, the standards of social work, and that code of ethics. Just as an FYI, I know most of you know this, but CSWE does require a minimum of 1 hour of supervision per week per student. So Everybody does that a little bit differently, but we really encourage you to look at that. And if at all possible, to do a set time, just like we do with the student schedule. It's so much easier if everybody knows, okay, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock, we do supervision, if you're able to do that in your agency. So just something to think about. So even though you have that formal hour of time a week, don't ignore those teachable moments though, because something could happen, on Thursday and you just had supervision on Wednesday, that in the moment checking in time and catching that, oh, that was really great that you use this task right now, or, oh, let's look at it maybe this way a little bit, or like we could tweak that skill. So even though you have that formal supervision time, obviously, catching those in the moment opportunities are really great as well. Timesheets. So this is the sheet I just talked about a second ago on, what you will sign. The student is responsible for this sheet. So you don't have to keep it, hold it, anything like that. But you will have to verify their activities. So they, their information's at the top, the date, start time, end time, total hours they put in. And then the students will also do kind of just a bullet pointed, what activities did they do then? That's really more for their purposes and for class purposes, because they will write journals on, what kind of things did you do this week? They will also, this is also a helpful tool for them when they go back and look at their SLP and, well, have I done that yet? Did I do that? What activities are falling into that SLP category? This section here, and you'll see that it's on here twice because there's 2 weeks on each timesheet. This is where you sign off on their hours and their supervision. You put the date the supervision happened and then you sign off on it. And again, we need at least that 1 hour every week. Now, a task supervisor. So again, you are their primary supervisor. You'll sign off on the paperwork. You do their supervision and all of that. But again, there may be someone else in your agency that a student would get a really great experience with, or a different skill set than you have. So we put an example in here. So say, for example, that I'm the supervisor and I work with adults that have severe mental health issues. And I don't work with children at all, but I've got another person that works in my agency that works with children and adolescents. So it'd be really great for the student to see that as well. So maybe you partner up with that person and they're the student's task supervisor to see those other entities. So you absolutely can do that. We encourage you to do that. We really do want students to get as diverse of an experience as possible. So if there are any opportunities like that, we absolutely encourage you to do that. Now, of course, the more people you get involved, the more communication that needs to happen. So if that is something that you would like to utilize in your agency, that's totally fine, as long as we make sure that that communication is there so that well, I didn't see Susie on Wednesday, but her timesheet says she was here. But then, that task supervisor can say, yes, she was here, she was with me, we did X, Y, and Z, that type of thing. This is an optional role, but we always like you to be aware of it if that's something that you'd like to take advantage of in your agency. So moving on to the competencies, I know you guys have already heard us talk a lot about CSWE and these competencies, and you may be like, what the heck are they talking about? So CSWE is the Council on Social Work Education. They are our USI's accrediting body. So they are the ones that say to USI Social Work, you have a legit program, and when people graduate, they have the skills they need. And so we have to look at what they tell us we need to do and what skill set students need to have to graduate from here. They update their guidelines every 7 years. So we are still currently on the 2015 guidelines, but new ones are coming out in 2022. So stay tuned for the training next year, because it might be a little bit different. We are, of course, totally biased because we're the field people, but field is actually the signature pedagogy of social work education. And what that means is that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. That's the crux of it all, where all of that information they got comes together and comes to fruition. And so field is really a super, super, super important piece of their education. And so that's also why it's so important that they get these competencies and they practice them, and that we make sure they have those skill sets. Now, there are 9 competencies, and so we're going to run through those with you quickly so that you know what they are. And you'll see these again on the student's learning plan, and then we'll kind of talk through how to do that. So first things first is ethical and professional behavior. 2 is diversity and difference. Competency 3, human rights, social justice. Competency 4, practice-informed research and research-informed practice. Competency 5, engaging in policy, knowing what that is, why that's important. And then 6 through 9 are more of those interactive skills. So 6 is engaging with individuals, families, groups, organizations, and communities. 7 is assessing those same entities. 8 is intervening with those. And then 9 is evaluating the practice with those entities. So how that comes to an actual activity versus just this, large concept is through this learning plan. And you'll hear us call it the SLP. This is what it looks like. There are a couple different ways you can do this. It will come to the students. It is the student's responsibility to fill it out, but again, you'll sign off on it and score it and things like that. So the students can do it. It's a fillable PDF, and so we do encourage them to type in there. But if you wanted to print it out and do the scoring, or you could do it electronically, or we're exploring some other things as well that we're trying out this semester. So you will get it one way or the other, but your field liaison will discuss that with you. But in general, it's going to have the same 9 competencies on it. And each competency will give a general broad overview of what that competency is. And then what the student has to do is to say, okay, what behaviors am I going to participate in to show that I know that competency and that I've done that? So this is what they will fill in here. So we'll walk through that a little bit more. So what the student has to do is, like I said, they have to make that into an activity. And so we really encourage them to look at it as a SMART goal. So just like you would do on a treatment plan, if you will, this is kind of the student's treatment plan, but for their education. So thinking of those actual activities that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And so when the student turns it into you for you to review, we do want to encourage you to, when you're looking through that, does this make sense? Is it something they can get done? Is it above and beyond what they need to do, or should they push themselves more? That type of thing. We wanted to show you an example of this. This is not exactly what yours has to look like, but just to kind of show you an example of how you turn that competency into an activity. So we're on competency 1 again here with that ethical and professional behavior. And the first thing they need to do here is show that they're making ethical decisions by applying the NASW Code of Ethics. So we have some examples here for you on, a student writing a SMART goal for that. So I will review the NASW Code of Ethics. Like that's something, we can prove that they did it. And of course, agency policies. And then the timely part is at the beginning of the semester. You can put dates on it even if you want. It's kind of between you and the student and what's going to work and what's appropriate. And the second thing, I will attend agency trainings throughout my internship. And then competency B, just to give you another example, is that use of reflection and self-regulation to manage their personal values and maintain professionalism. I'll journal every week, reflect on my experiences with my supervisor during each week of supervision. I'll discuss my personal values and maintaining that professionalism with my supervisor during our weekly supervision. So you see how we've made those into kind of those more specific SMART goals. Now, so after the SLP has several processes that it goes through. So the student gets it in class, they write it up, you guys review it and go over it. And as the instructor, I would sign off on it, and then you sign off on it as the agency supervisor. So that's like, yep, we're good to go. This is what we're doing this semester. But then when it comes to midterm and final, those things have to be scored. And this is the rubric for that. And this is on the SLP, so you don't have to remember it. But it's a 5-point scale. And it really is a snapshot of what's going on with the student right this second on this competency, on this specific behavior. So anywhere from unacceptable to exceptional, is it developing, is it acceptable, or are we above and beyond that? We also have a non-applicable category. We hope that you don't have to use that very often, if at all, but sometimes at midterm you do need to use that. Maybe you haven't gotten to that activity yet. Maybe that's something you're doing later in the semester. Or maybe it's something that at the beginning of the semester you thought you could accomplish or going to accomplish, and maybe that's not going to work out now. And so we have time to adjust that. So kind of some general rules about that scoring and about those evaluations is anytime a problem comes up, midterm should not be the first time that they hear about it. Again, we're talking about that weekly supervision and, catching those teachable moments. Students shouldn't be shocked at midterm that all of a sudden, like, well, you've been late all the time, or you didn't do this assessment correctly, or whatever it happens to be. Getting that information to them as quickly as possible so they can change it. Providing feedback on what needs to be improved before the final evaluation. And of course, just some of the paperwork things like making sure all the scores are there, making sure that all the signatures are present, that type of thing. Now, as far as that scoring goes, like I said, we have that 5-point scale. And at midterm, we don't expect them to have 5s. And because 5s are like, you're graduating, you're a professional, you're going to go out there and kill it as a social worker. They are learning, they are interns. And so it's very, very common to see 2s and 3s at midterm. And we're totally fine with that because those skills should be emerging and, that type of thing. So just kind of looking at that scale and seeing, what's appropriate for the time, because it really is just a snapshot. And again, if we have NAs at midterm, that's totally fine. But that's where we'll have a conversation between you, the student, and the instructor on, okay, so what's our plan then? Is this something that's still upcoming, or do we need to make an adjustment? Bonnie talked about earlier, that SLP is a living, breathing document. So it's not set in stone. So sometimes what happens is, in August, you think, yes, we're going to do this specific activity to fulfill competency 4 or whatever it happens to be. Well, maybe that went out the window, life changes, and so that's okay. Those adjustments can be made at the time. We just want to make sure that if any modifications do need to be made, that we make those before that final evaluation. Because of course, at that final evaluation, we would prefer to have those 4s and 5s. Because at the end of that internship, we do want them to master those competencies and to be our coworkers and be someone that is a good social worker and that we would want to work with. So at the final, again, we expect those 4s and 5s if it's accurate. We have to get all those signatures present. The other thing with that final evaluation, and this is something we'll help you remember as well, but we encourage students to keep a copy of their completed SLP as well as all of their timesheets, because more and more often we're finding that when they go to get licensed, they need to show those documents. And so encouraging them to keep a copy of that. And like I said, we'll all do that, but they really need to keep that. As far as these meetings go too, so you kind of know your responsibility of it. Typically what we do, we encourage you to schedule an hour for each of those meetings, but usually, unless there's any kind of major issues that need to be addressed, those usually take about 20 to 30 minutes. So just so you kind of know what your obligation would be on that. And that would be schedule an hour for midterm and then schedule an hour for final. These are the ending sheets that you'll see in the SLP. And, we talked about signatures before. And signatures are what makes this document valid. And so it's very important that we have those signatures. These are the 3 signature pages here. So the first one is what gets signed once the student first fills out the SLP. And the agency supervisor as well as the faculty liaison sign it. And like I said, that's the signature that says, yep, you're good to go. This is what we're working on this semester. And then the midterm and final, all 3 parties sign that to make sure that everything's been gone through, everybody agrees with those decisions, etc. Now, this next form that we want to tell you about, this is not something that you have to fill out necessarily, but we wanted you to be aware of it. This is a form that typically the faculty field liaison fills out. It serves a couple different purposes. For one, it helps us to make sure we did everything we need to do. It's CSWE compliance, and that's some of the paperwork stuff. You know, are all the scores there? Are all the signature there? That kind of fun stuff. But the other two are more important for the student-specific growth. So their social work skills, you know, as far as their SLP goes, you know, what are the areas that still need to be worked on further before final? What's the plan to assure that we're going to grow in those areas, that type of thing. And then the third thing that we have added recently, and this was actually from all of the agency's feedback, is just some of those workplace skills. You know, are they being professional? Are they showing up on time? Are they following dress code? Do they have good communication? Are they using those critical thinking skills? Are they using supervision appropriately? Those are things we have found that, again, agencies have kind of come to us and say, you know, the professionalism, you know, could be bumped up a little bit. And so we're doing things on our end from an educator standpoint to increase that. And so we want to make sure they're doing it at internship. And so we will, as the liaisons, we will be asking you, hey, how are they doing in these areas? Because those things are really important too, not just their social work skills. Now, as far as grades go, so we will ask you to score that SLP. And again, it's just a snapshot, like where are they at right this second, what's going on. What happens sometimes is on that 5-point scale, what students will look at or assume, oh, a 3 means a C and a 5 means an A. And that's not how this works. It really is just a scoring system. It's not a direct reflection of their grades. And so we don't want students to get freaked out by that. And we also don't want all of you at the agencies to get worried about that either. The grades are really our responsibility as USI. So we absolutely will take your input and all of that, but you don't have to worry about grades. They do get a grade for internship, and they also get a grade for seminar, but a lot of other things play into that. Are they showing up to class? Are they turning in their homework? Are they doing appropriate homework? You know, how are they scoring on those? Are they bringing together that information that we want them to bring together? Are they synthesizing that information between educational coursework and their practicum experience? So it really is an overall evaluation. So we just don't ever want you as an agency to feel like, oh, well, I can't give them a 3 or a 2 or a 1 because that means they'll fail the class. That's not your responsibility. That's not on you. It's really whatever you feel like is a fair score for the student for their activities at the time. And like I said, we absolutely will take your input into consideration with that, but there's more that goes into that grade than the actual SLP. And I think Bonnie gets to talk about problems.
I know. I asked Summer if she would actually be the bad cop this year, because I get to be the bad cop all the time. And so she said no. So here's the thing. If you have a problem with a student, don't suffer in silence. We are here. Reach out to me or Summer, reach out to your faculty field liaison. It's important because if a student knows there's an issue, we can address it with them and they can correct that behavior. And our experience has been the majority of students, once that concern is brought to their attention, they do correct it. So prevention's best. We want to know early if at all possible. So what we want you to do though is, for example, this is just if a student they're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock, but they wander in at 8:15 on a consistent basis. Then we would like for you to actually address it with the student in one of your supervision meetings. Like when I say 8 o'clock, it means for you to be here at 8 o'clock. 8:15 is late. And so just directly address it with them. If you have met with them and the student still shows up at 8:15, for example, then notify your faculty field liaison or Summer and I, and we will also address it with the student. We ask that you make documentation, just a little note that you have met with them, that you have addressed these issues. So that way it just helps us know that what has been done before we talk to the student. You can contact us or faculty field liaison. Sometimes a meeting between us, the student, the faculty liaison, and even you help. So sometimes we can set those up if we need to. Immediate concerns, discuss with your liaison, telephone, email, any kind of thing like that. So we get involved as well. But if for example, Patty Lair is joining us after retirement, and so she's coming back as a faculty liaison. And so if you don't know Patty, but she's like, oh, I can't remember what her name is, but I know Bonnie, you can pick up the phone and call me or send me an email, but I will loop Patty back into it or Summer back into it as well. So use us. We are here to help. You do not have to suffer in silence. And again, our experience has been once the problem is addressed with the student, the student does correct that behavior. So we just take it as a matter of fact. It's like, we've been told that you have some tardiness or tardy behavior. If you're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock, you need to be there 10 minutes early because you need to be ready to work at 8 o'clock. So usually once these are pointed out, students correct their behaviors. So other things that may be of a concern if they're not performing the tasks that they should be performing. If they're violating agency policy, let us know immediately. If they are not cooperative with the learning process or your field instructor or the supervisor, let us know immediately. If they're not meeting their learning expectations, let us know immediately. And of course, if there's any kind of immediate issue, physical or verbal assaults, violation of university or agency policy on alcohol or drug use, any kind of sexual misconduct, any kind of violation of the NASW ethics, contact us immediately. We will also send you the field manual or a link to the field manual. So there's a complete list of things, and there may be more that are not in that list, but we'll send that to you as well. So if you have a concern, let us know, because it's our responsibility to educate students to turn them into professional social workers. So on the left side of the screen, you'll see students partying, and on the right side of the screen, you see the professional social workers that we have molded them into, and that's what we're wanting. We all don't come into the profession knowing exactly what's expected of us, and so we are there to help mold and train and develop. And it is our responsibility as social workers to do that. Unfortunately, at times, someone comes into the profession that may not be suited for the profession. We want to be active participants in making sure that we help students find the right path for them. That may be social work, and it may be something else. So gatekeeping is extremely important to our profession as well. So just some frequently asked questions. And actually, let me just take a little bit of a break here before I get started. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat feature, and then we can get to those. And then once we go through those, I'll answer those that are in the chat feature. And then if you have other questions, we can open up to that as well, because we're also trying to be very respectful of your time. So BSW students complete a minimum of 150 hours in the fall semester. That's approximately 10 to 12 hours per week. In the spring, the BSW students complete 300 hours, and that's roughly 20 to 22 hours a week. Our generalist students in the summer complete a minimum of 425 hours over 13 weeks in the summer, and that's about 33 to 35 hours per week, so nearly full time. And then our MSW clinical students complete a minimum of 600 hours, at least 300 hours each semester, and that's 20 to 25 hours a week roughly. So we get this question every year about when can the students begin their internship or do their internship. They do have to wait to start their internship when the semester begins. So we don't want students actually starting their internship prior to August 23rd when classes start. But some agencies have fixed orientations prior to school starting. They can attend those orientations, but they cannot have any contact with clients. So Fall semester begins on the 23rd. The spring semester begins January 10th, and summer begins May 16th. You do not have to remember these dates. We'll send this to you. Students can be in their internship anytime the university is open, which means that sometimes we have no class days, but the university is still open. So there's a difference between no class days and closed days. Currently, in the fall semester, there are only a couple of scheduled closings. Labor Day, September 6th. Thanksgiving break, the university is closed from Wednesday through Sunday, the 24th of November through the 28th. And then we are closed for winter break beginning the 23rd of December and reopen January 2nd. So spring semester, there's a few holidays, but not many. We are open at spring break. We just have no classes. Now, those no class days, students can be in their internship. So sometimes students get confused about those. Generally speaking, most of you don't know when we have no class days, but we have assessment day and fall break in the fall semester. University is open, but there are no classes. Spring break in Martin Luther King Jr. Day and assessment day in the spring semester, students can be in their internship during those times. So if a student does not complete necessary hours, then there are a couple of things we can do. Number one, we need to know as soon as possible if they are getting behind on their hours, because then we can intervene with them and say, you've got to increase your hours, or we need to work on your hours. So we would like for them to finish their internship the week prior to finals week. However, they can go into finals week to complete a few hours. It's just, they're also taking finals during that time, and we want them to try to focus on their finals if at all possible. The other thing, some students actually have all of their hours, but they want to continue during finals week, and that's okay as well. So during finals week, that's kind of our mark. Are students allowed to attend events outside the agency? And the answer is yes. We actually encourage field instructors to include students in those activities. It could be a training, it could be a site council meeting, or a number of other things. And yes, students can attend those as well. They can visit other agencies while they're a student, because we all well know that once we begin working, we never have, number one, the opportunity, or number two, the time involved to visit other agencies. So while they're a student, they can also do that. So they can count those hours if you approve it. Now, I will tell you that sometimes students might be involved in some other organization where there's a training that they want to attend. For example, if they're a youth director at a church, they may want to attend a training for youth directors of that particular faith. And that is really on their own, unless they're at a faith-based organization. So it's really up to you to decide if that's appropriate for them to attend or not. And so if you need direction or any kind of, if you want to ask us any questions, we're here to help that. So what do you have to supervise our students? So for our undergraduate students, you have to have at least a BSW from an accredited school of social work. We would love it if you had an LBSW, LSW, or LCSW, but that's not required. But we do want you to have at least 2 years post-BSW experience and at least 1 year in your current position. And this be certified by the USI field office or field education. That is the form that you filled out that many of you have received from me recently, the field credential form or the field certification form. For our MSW supervisors, you must hold an MSW degree and be an LCSW and at least 2 years post-MSW experience. So, and I think everyone meets that. So, safety. Students do go through a safety training. It talks about personal safety, office safety, community, as well as health safety. Because of COVID, we've included that. They go through they need to self-screen basically to make sure that they're healthy and able to enter field. Especially with COVID, we've encouraged students to, the University of Southern Indiana has encouraged students to receive the vaccine. It's not required, but they've been strongly encouraged to receive it. They also have to sign a waiver saying that they understand that they are entering into a community-based field internship. And then we also give them an emergency event guide, which basically helps prepare them in the event of an emergency. Talks about telehealth, distance opportunities. We have some assignments that they can be done remotely. We're hoping we don't have to use any of those because we're hoping we're on the tail end of those kinds of things. However, with the Delta variant, who knows? So if your agency also has an event guide, we would like for you to share that with your students. If you need that from us, we can actually send that to you so that we can help in the event that an agency shuts down for 2 weeks because there's a high rise of COVID cases. We have last year we actually found that to be the case. Some agencies, no one shut down like we did in March of 20, but some agencies, because of high numbers of COVID cases, actually did kind of a rolling shutdown where they would close down for 2 weeks. They would do things remotely or through telehealth, and then they would come back in person. And so students can participate in those kinds of activities because it's the way of the future. Remote and telehealth is very much a part of what we do anymore. So students can participate in those, but if you need some help with some activities or some assignments, we can help you with that. So COVID, our elephant in the room. USI is requiring face coverings if you are on campus and indoors. So we have it on our desk, and as long as we are in our offices, we can be without our mask. But if we leave our offices, we have to have our masks on, and that includes in the classroom. We are currently not requiring COVID vaccines for our students, faculty, or staff, but everyone is strongly encouraged to receive the vaccine. Now, students, however, have to comply with their host agency policies. So if your agency requires students to have COVID vaccine, then for the student to be able to do their internship with you, they must have that as well. So they must comply with all health and safety policies, or policies including health and safety. We're hearing from a number of organizations, primarily health providers, hospitals, nursing homes, et cetera, that are requiring it. And we are sharing that information with our students. What we can't do is we can't collect protected health information and keep it and share that with you. So if your agency requires it, then what you will need to do is work with your student to get their vaccine card from them. So we have no plans to change to a virtual format at this point in time. We're going to knock on wood symbolically or literally. But we will follow the CDC guidelines to make sure that we are protecting students and staff and faculty and our community. If any kind of remote or alternative kinds of things are needed, we can help you. If our students are on, if we have to go to remote classes or virtual classes, it really would not impact their ability to do their internship with you. But we'll all stay informed, and we'll just let you know of things as we know it. What we have learned about COVID is expect the unexpected and have some plans in place for it. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So we had a couple of questions in the chat, and Cynthia, help me if I miss any of them.
It looks like the one got answered about the requirements for supervisors.
Okay. So yes, for BSW students, undergraduate students, we require a BSW and 2 years post BSW experience. If you have an LBSW, an LSW, or an LCSW, that's just icing on the cake. For our master's students, for their clinical internship, you must have an LCSW and 2 years post-master's experience.
And I think it was Sophie that answered or that asked that question. And so if you have any concerns about that or other questions, definitely let us know. Because sometimes agencies fall into some little bit different categories. And so what to look.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to hang back for a few minutes afterwards. We can chat about it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Natasha is asking if students complete an end of term survey. It's not really a survey. We ask what kinds of tasks and activities that they have done in their internship. So we basically, so other students can know what kinds of tasks and activities to expect from certain agencies. Not really any suggestions. It's really more about what did you do? What population did you work with? What kinds of tasks and activities did you do?
And it is anonymous.
Yeah, it is
The
anonymous.
student doesn't put their name on it or anything like that. So it's just directly like what Bonnie said. What did you do? What was your experience there?
If an organization is requiring no in-person meetings, can we meet virtually for supervision? If that becomes an issue, yes. This is the way we've been doing. I've been supervising students this summer, and we have met via Zoom, once a week via Zoom. So yes, you can do your supervision via Zoom. We don't want it to be telephone because we do have ways to meet in person through the aids of our boxes on our desks. So yes, you can meet via Zoom for your supervision. The other thing is this isn't a question that anyone has listed, but you can also do group supervision. So if you have 2 or 3 students at your agency, you could meet with those students together for supervision. Now, we also, talking about those teachable moments, it's probably also good to have some time set aside to do some individual meetings, but it doesn't have to be done weekly, but you can do group supervision. Any other questions?
This isn't a question, but could I just have everyone, if you haven't given me your name, email, and organization, to type that into the chat feature so I can make sure that we get you marked as attending.
And so what we do with that is we send all of our attendees their names and emails to outreaching engagement so that you can get your CEU for this. We have about 3 minutes left, and we have a couple messages. Okay. Oh, there we go. Everybody's just signing in. So if we don't have more questions, I thank you guys so much for taking your time, your lunch break to attend this meeting. We'd love to see you guys in person. So hopefully next year we can do this face-to-face, actually in a room, and coffee and donuts are on us. So, so anyway, but thank you guys for coming in. We really appreciate it. If you have questions that were not answered, feel free to reach out to either Summer or myself, and we will do our best to answer those. Oh, actually, I just saw something. Someone did ask a question about the students' project that they do at the end of their senior year, this spring semester. And they asked if that project has to be tied to the internship, and the answer is no. Their project can be completely separate from their internship, but probably 99% of our students do their senior project with their agency that they're doing their internship with. So I don't teach the class, but I can tell you that much about it. So I hope that answers the question that was here.
Adrian's asking about LMHC.
Oh, what we have to do if we have someone, it's not a preference. It is if we have to use an LMHC, we have to have someone to take on that social work supervision responsibilities. So if you don't have anyone that has an LCSW or is a social worker at that agency, contact me, and then we can make sure that we have them linked up with an LCSW or a social worker to do that social work supervision.
And unfortunately, because, with LMHC and some other disciplines, we're trained very, very similarly.
Yes.
But since we're under CSWE's guidelines, they're the ones that tell us who can and can't supervise. And so Bonnie's right, we'll have to have a conversation.
For example, I'm doing supervision with 3 students this summer that when I placed them in their agencies before summer began, they had social workers in the agencies. But between the time I placed them and the time the students started, the social workers left that agency. So they're still there. They're still receiving their agency supervision from the director of the agency, but I'm meeting with them on a weekly basis to make sure that they have that social work perspective. So it's basically an additional thing the students have to do, not necessarily something else the agency has to do, but we do need to know about that. Also, if something changes, because if you look at our names, we are a very heavily female profession, and gosh, we just have lots of babies. And so sometimes maternity leaves happen when we don't expect it. And so if supervisors change, we want to know that. So contact your faculty liaison and say, oh, they were being supervised by Sally, but now they're going to be supervised by Janie. And so, and if Janie has never supervised for us before, then we'll actually get them to fill out our form so that we make sure that they have the credentials that they need. So any kind of changes, just let us know. Congratulations on the baby boom at your agency. I know that's great for you, but so just let us know as well. And also our students have babies too. Oh, excellent. Go figure. So, but we just work around it. All right. So if we have everything, then we are at 1:01. I promise to give that 1 minute back to you at another date. How's that? Thanks, guys, for attending. We appreciate it. We hope to see you in person soon.
Right on. Thanks. Bye-bye.